Mary, Lauren, welcome everyone to Tech Bros. We are back coming to you from sunny Los Angeles. I've got some yard workers going to make some wonderful noise during the show today. How are you doing there in New York?
I'm good. I'm ready to get the heck out and go see some leaves. That's what you do, I guess, when you get old.
Oh, the
You know,
fall in New York.
well, I'm going up to Vermont as soon as the show
Okay,
ends, so we'll see what happens.
very East Coast of you. I love it. Good,
I
good
don't
way
know
to
what they do in
end the
Vermont.
week.
I have no idea what they do. I think they have maple syrup and they, you know, listen to the Grateful Dead and fish. So I don't know. It'll be a new experience for me. We'll
And
see
they're
what
going
happens.
to talk about the skiing and snowboarding that they're going to start in a month. So just be
Yeah.
prepared for those combos. Good, good, good. Love it. And we are joined by, I'm going to bring him up right now, John Kutay, who is also here in sunny Los Angeles with me. Not actually in the same physical space. As you can see, he's coming to us from his studio, which he may or may not want to talk about. That's another part of his non-data life. Hey, John, welcome.
Hey, hey Mary, hey Lauren, how's it going today?
Good. Great to have you here. I only,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
realized recently when we did one of those low key data hangouts that you and I are in such close geographical proximity. How long have you been in LA? I forget.
I came down during the COVID exodus, so from San Francisco, the great COVID exodus when everything was shut down. The pandemic was looking very bleak, and then we came down to LA and we were like, oh, there is no pandemic down here. That's everything was open, so that was pretty interesting. But now I'm on the road every week, so it's been fun though to have my home base in LA.
You're still not really here, but yeah, it's amazing to me that it's not more of a thing, the San Francisco to LA exodus, because LA is not cheap, but it is a little bit cheap in comparison to San Francisco, and the sun shines, and people aren't assholes, and you can meet people who are like, work in, God forbid, something that's not tech. So I feel like
It's a crazy idea. I went 10 years in San Francisco without meeting anyone outside tech. So yeah, now everyone here is a musician, actor, barista, all that good stuff.
even the ones who work in tech, that's what I love. There's a real creativity to it
Uh huh.
here.
Uh huh.
Model,
Lauren,
influencer. Yeah, I do all that from New York. I'm a singer. I'm a model. I'm an influencer. Whatever. You can do it from anywhere. You don't have
exactly,
to be in
exactly.
LA.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but no, John, I'm excited to talk to you today. You're someone I've wanted to have on for a while, and yeah, you're going to war with Batch. In my opinion. Oh yeah, sure am. Full guns blazing, going to war with batch processing, and we're gonna get into that a little bit today. We're gonna get into some of like what's going on with the ecosystems, with
Mhm.
Oracle, maybe Snowflake, maybe some other stuff. But
Microsoft.
yeah, Microsoft. To lead it off, John, like what is the difference between batch and streaming? And what are you doing at Stream? And yeah, if you want to give us the introduction as well, like who
Yeah.
are you?
Yeah. About me. So I've had a products here at Stream. I was one of the original engineers. I've been working on stream processing since my college days, actually. So I studied computer science at USF. Did research for the chair of the department and the on green home energy processing, and that was a natural fit for streaming. That was the first time I implemented continuous stream processing with Windows. The actual implementation was fun. Windows, as in sliding Windows, not the operating system. And now just seeing it applied in some of the largest enterprises and even startups that understand the value has been super fun. And I appreciate both of you catching my old album art, and it's a poorly kept secret that I'm also a musician. My music alter ego JKXO is out there doing music streaming on Spotify and Apple, all that fun stuff. So
So
yeah, happy.
you're about all kinds of streaming.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so for people who don't know, like when we talk about like data processing and stuff, like how like what is streaming versus batch, which is what you've been so gung ho about like lately.
Yeah, the coolest thing about streaming is that it's theoretically designed with the fact that data is infinite and data is continuous, and whereas batch will just run on a sequence or an interval, right? But when you think about data, when you think about life, when you think about things happening, right? Data is just constantly coming to us, and we have to know how to process it as it comes. Like you would never, look at, let's say, the things in your life as batch processes. You would see like, I'm doing this today. I have these events on my calendar. I have all this stuff coming to me. I'm hearing news coming to me constantly. Your mind is almost like a stream processor. Batch processing, on the other hand, it's a matter of convenience, right? It's very simple to think about your data world as, hey, I'm just going to process data every 30 minutes, every 1 hour, every 90 minutes, every day. And the cool thing about streaming is it gives you the almost the central nervous system where you might have all these inputs and things that happen. Let's just call it broadly, things happening in your business, in your life, and it gives you a way to respond to it as it happens. So and data teams can have that same flexibility.
So we've got Val here, a regular viewer, who's chiming in with the getting straight to the good questions. Val says streaming and batch are the same. What's your response?
Yeah, I mean, everything is the same. Cats and dogs are the same. I mean, we all come from one, say the same cell. I mean, I guess it depends on the context of that statement, but But we
And
can
Val,
talk about
if you want to chime in a bit more, Val, as we continue the chat, he might be able to flesh that out a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, so like one thing that one thing that's very different is in streaming, like, and if you look at the product I work on in Stream, there's no concept of a job, right? So in batch processing, jobs are almost very innately required. That, hey, I'm gonna have this this source that's gonna pull data. I'm gonna have this transformation. I'm gonna sync the data into some target, and this is gonna run on a 15-minute or 30-minute interval, and that's a job. But in streaming, right, data is continuously flowing. You're continuously doing the processing, and it's a powerful and flexible concept that really maps better into the real world.
Yeah, and a lot of the batch stuff here, like you mentioned something that I think is interesting with like, running jobs. Like there's things like Airflow, DBT, a bunch of different orchestrators out there that I think are built to handle this complexity of batch, and uh, run these jobs in order, right? We all know about the concept of a DAG, but like how can companies that are doing all this batch stuff think about streaming? And like, obviously, if you have use cases where, like you have an app and like something happens and like, it has to get to the interface so the user can see it within 100 milliseconds or whatever, or 50 milliseconds. That makes sense. But like with all this, DBT and Airflow type stuff, how can teams that have leaned heavily into that think about like some of the scaling problems they might be facing and like when they should start, thinking about moving to streaming, which is actually cheaper at scale in my experience. Like how do you kind of think about all that?
Absolutely. It requires a little bit of independent intellectual thought, which is why it's so surprising to me that, a lot of engineers who, are constantly tasked with learning and improving themselves and debugging aren't able to step out of their batch ways and essentially understand that, a lot of the issues with batch can be solved with streaming quite simply. And I agree with you that it's cheaper at scale and it can be cheaper in small volumes as well. There's just a lot of misconceptions. There was one example. There was this tweet that went viral. I honestly don't remember who tweeted it, but it was something like, "Oh, our team did an estimate of like batch versus real time, cost analysis, and it turned out going to real time would cost us, 1,000x more, and we wouldn't be able to prove the ROI of that. And I'm like, yeah, because your definition of doing real time is taking your batch jobs and running them on a 1 second interval, right? That's exorbitantly expensive. Now, if you actually went with the streaming first approach, you would get that 1 second latency as table stakes, and it would be with you can do it on a very small dedicated instance or a serverless environment, and we've proven this out with a Striim developer, which is our serverless multi-node, multi-tenant streaming service, where you can essentially get real-time data for free.
So I want to know more about Striim, because I actually don't know much more about Striim, which is where you work. Striim. I'm pronouncing it correctly. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Tell me more about how it works, the architecture, and also who are the sort of, if you don't mind giving an ad to your competitors, who are its direct competitors? You can say them really fast so nobody really hears their names.
Our competitors are complacency and failure to action. But basically what Striim is and I'm so glad you spelled it out. The two I's stand for intelligent integration, right? Okay. And it's streaming. So streaming intelligent integration. Now, why is it intelligent integration? I'll give you a backstory. So the company's founders came from a company called Golden Gate. The CEO and CTO of Golden Gate Software, which at the time of its acquisition by Oracle was the #1 database replication product in the market. Now, Golden Gate was solving a very specific use case for the, more of the 2000s architecture, data stacks. And Lauren, we're going to get into that since you brought up in your tweet, like the Oracle ecosystem. But really, it was more about solving challenges around, high availability in databases. So when you think about, when you go to your ATM and you're doing a transaction there, that's actually replicated across many databases and mainframes. And this is the type of critical infrastructure that Golden Gate powered. Now, that was just replication, right? So that's integration. Now, then the vision was to make this intelligent integration, and that's where the stream processing comes into the picture. So Striim is unified change data capture, replication, and stream processing, and that's where you get the intelligent integration in a streaming fashion. Now, how do they come up with this idea? I think this is just seeing what so many enterprise customers were doing in the next steps in terms of modernizing and getting more value out of their infrastructure rather than just moving data around, but taking action. And now we're talking about powering AI and all these very cool use cases.
Give me the verbal version of the architecture diagram. So you've got your data sources. What happens next?
Absolutely. So you have let's just call it your operational data coming from and we'll start here on the left, right? You have your operational data. It could be from your Oracle databases, MongoDB, whatever, your databases, IoT devices, your CRM, right? Your Salesforce, and you capture the data with change data capture, a lot of the same fundamentals that the Golden Gate team applied before, but in a broad sense, right? Where doing log-based change data capture from databases, API-based change data capture, where assuming that the data is always going to be continuously flowing into the platform. Now, the platform is an in-memory stream processing engine. It's a true event-based stream processor. Things like watermarks, recovery, has a fully managed replicated service across multiple regions in a cloud. So if one node goes down, it'll fail over automatically to the other. And then finally, you have your delivery layer, right? Which is essentially moving data into things like Kafka, event hubs, streaming services, but also streaming endpoints of, and we're talking about going to war with batch, but also just batch platforms like Databricks, Snowflake, etc. So, in that sense, it's very friendly with the batch ecosystem. But what we're really trying to get into here is making sure that people understand that, it's not one or the other. It's a bit of both. So I talked about, pulling the data from operational sources, doing the stream processing, doing the data delivery in real time to these targets. And the thing that people forget about is the being able to make sure that there's high SLAs around this, right? And because what's the point of moving data around? You're not, no one's in the business of just moving data, right? Like if you look at a customer or any sort of company with a
Well,
data
I think
team.
there are a lot of companies that are just in the business of moving data.
Well,
And
yeah, I
a
mean,
few of them are
that,
doing okay.
yeah, that's yeah, I mean, and that's the problem here. But when you look at the
Right,
actual
right.
enterprises who are spending money on data tools, right? They're not in the business of moving data. They're in the business of if they're a retailer selling clothes, if they're an airline, moving passengers around safely, like things along those lines. So that's where the SLAs come into the picture. So having uptime and data freshness SLAs, and really making sure all the way to the data delivery to the consumers that you're able to validate that. And if you're not meeting those SLAs, you need to know that in real time. So we make that accessible to you as Slack or Microsoft Teams alerts out of the box. And we think that's just as important as the data movement.
Absolutely.
For sure, for
Yeah.
sure. And how I'm going to share something here real quick. I'm going to hit present. I'm going to share my screen real quick. And what I'm going to share here is I'm going to call it the market map of the week. Because in the last couple of weeks, last year or two, everyone has their own Striim market map and their version of the world. I'm not saying who's right or wrong, but let me do this real quick and go here. Cool. You have this up?
Do I need to bring this up? Let's see. Add to the stage. There we go.
Yeah,
right.
here's the latest market map of the week. And
very impressive. So many
the
logos.
Striim has so many logos. And we have a timeline here. Usually on these things we don't get timelines, but history of Striim processing systems, right? And the research prototypes back here. We've got these seem to just be like mainframes and database systems. Then we get over here, and now we have Spark over here, Cloud Data Flow. Then we've got this new wave, Rising Wave, Time Plus, Materialize, everything else here. This is the market map of the week, right? There's a new one every week of what's going on, and no shade on this person, but here's his company or whatever. And
Can you magnify the image a little bit?
yeah, this is the history of Striim processing systems.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah.
And then the first thing we've got on here is John saying, well, it's hard to include everyone. Striim obviously admitted, but like there's also OLTP databases on here and mainframes, like I just said. And so like I think like my whole thing is like this whole narrative, and I think Confluent recently and Confluent are the people behind Kafka and Jay Krebs and those people who built Kafka. A bit ago, they recently had the conference. Current is their conference. I think you may have been there, John. Correct?
I was there. Yeah.
That
was great.
And Confluent is both competing with most of the vendors on various things that were there. They also have their own platform. I'm just like, what's going on in this space? Like there's a lot of noise. And how can someone maybe who is interested in this, or maybe knows a product or two, or knows what an OLTP versus an OLAP is, versus like, who knows what like a topic or a message queue is, like how can they kind of sort through all this? And how should they be sorting through all this when there's so much noise out there?
Oh yeah, you go through every single one, you try yourself. No, I'm joking. So
that's the 2 years. That's 2 years of someone's job right there.
Yeah. It's so I was at Current last week. It was a fun event for sure, and it was so interesting that so many companies there were there to unify streaming, like we do, like saying they do everything right from connectors of processing to data delivery, and even Confluent had that message as well. And you kind of have this sense of like, hey, at like Snowflake Summit or Databricks Data and AI Summit, you didn't see too many Snowflake and Databricks competitors going and promoting themselves so openly. So obviously there's something up where I think what's being promoted in the streaming industry isn't actually what people are buying. So that's one thing to be aware of, right? So I think that because look, if you were, let's say you're a AWS native shop, you already have, a CDC service, you have a managed Flink service, you have managed streaming with Kinesis. It's all there and it's all super cheap, right? And Amazon will support it for you, right? So the question is like, what's new? Like, what is like this year of current with all the new vendors popping up? Like, what's the actual innovation there? That I couldn't see it. It seems like there's just new packaged offerings, maybe different pricing. Sounds like people want to make it more expensive, which is cool too. Because that money still has to go back to the cloud providers, right? They have to do a cost plus pricing and give them a cut of the action. So it's hard to say that streaming just by itself is going to bring a lot of value to your business. I think the best way to really look at it is work backwards from your business use cases and know that you're not constrained to the limits of batch processing. And also, if you hear someone say internally that, oh, I heard streaming's hard and expensive, so we just have to keep doing batch, right? Never take that at face value, because I think that's one of the big misconceptions in the market. I think it was pushed by some batch players until while they were figuring out their streaming strategy, which is coming
those
to fruition now.
dirty dogs.
Yeah.
Those dirty batch people.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Son of a batch, as I say.
I want to back up just a sec to bring in Val's response from earlier. Val, who had said streaming and batch are the same, and he did flesh that out a little bit, saying that streaming is the smallest element of data movement, one record at a time. Batch is just a bunch of records pooled together, but we treat batch and streaming in the same manner in terms of processing records. I guess what I'm saying is that people who do batch should not be scared of doing real time. So he's actually here to support you, John, because the tech has now evolved to manage it in a fairly straightforward manner. So thanks for the explanation there, Val.
Thanks, Val. Good to hear from you again. I met Val at Big Data London after my panel with Juan Cicada and run by Chris Tabb. It was a really fun panel. So always happy to see people in the data community come together, whether it's on LinkedIn or at these conferences.
And on Tech Bros, it doesn't cost you anything to fly into the show.
The best place for data people to get together is the Tech Bros podcast. You can quote me on that.
Yes. I'm always impressed by how much you all are on the road. Lauren's about to jump in, getting back to batch or streaming, Lauren.
Yeah, no, I'm curious about how the ecosystems come into play, right? Like we've got every ecosystem is built around one of the major vendors, the cloud providers, et cetera. So you've got, the Microsoft ecosystem, you've got the Google ecosystem, you've got Snowflake, you've got Databricks, and Snowflake and Databricks, they're technically, in my opinion, extensions of the other ecosystems. Snowflake,
that's right,
leaning heavily towards AWS, but also Microsoft and a little bit of Google. And then Databricks, heavily Microsoft, but also AWS, and then Oracle as well. I mean, your leadership at your company comes from a heavily Oracle background. And one thing that I like to poke at with people who maybe they've only worked at these Web 2.5 or whatever startups of the last couple of years. They're oh no, nobody uses Oracle. And I go, well, you know what? Look at Larry Ellison's boat. It's a gigantic yacht, and look at the Snowflake boat, and that's just a little racing boat. One's the size of a room, and one's would take up a whole city block in New York. What is the Oracle system like today? And I'm saying this as someone who's worked in and around this for a while, but in your opinion, like, what are people doing in the Oracle system that like some of these startup people might be like poo-pooing or saying, "Oh, that's legacy" or whatever. Like, what's cool going on there?
Yeah, I mean Oracle. There's no question. It's at least a decade ahead of any of the popular open source databases. And I've seen it so many times working with enterprise customers that are think they're in a migration journey off of Oracle, and then it turns out that all it takes is one architect to just say no, like this won't work if we move off of Oracle. Like we've architected all our mission critical applications with certain assumptions in mind that Oracle supports that these other databases don't support yet, right? And and it really does come back to the SLAs, right? Because the types of teams that are running, like, let's say manage Postgres or a manage MySQL, they'll at their scale, right, they'll throw engineers at a problem if there's some split brain issue with the databases or things along those lines, and ultimately try to debug it. But if you're a bank, if you're an airline, you're an insurance company, one of those types of things, I mean, downtime and missing transactions can be huge liabilities. So Oracle is just still so far ahead. It's so prevalent. It's literally everywhere. Like it's really I find it a little bit a little bit ignorant when people say dismissive things about the Oracle infrastructure, when literally when they go do anything, like go shop at a grocery store or go pull money from their checkings account, whatever, that's running through that type of infrastructure, right? So their lives depend on it on one hand, but they don't understand the technology from the other. So and when you do see enterprises move off or adopt multiple databases, it's a very specific portion of their computing. It's not all of it, right? And I think we're going to continue to see that for a while. The other thing that's evolving quite a bit is that Oracle does have its own cloud now. Oracle Cloud is becoming very popular. It is popular to some extent, but it's becoming even more mainstream. They have their own data stack. So like when you think about the core tooling in each cloud, between databases, NoSQL, streaming, event stores, Kubernetes, all that stuff, right? Like Oracle Cloud has an equivalent of all of that. So they're getting into the cloud wars quietly. And we are seeing adoption of that across a lot of enterprise customers that are moving from like on-prem Oracle to Oracle Cloud. And being able to support those types of customers through the future is definitely something that we prioritize, because a lot of next gen widely used infrastructure is going to be running there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there's in the same way that there's still like banks running on mainframes, like, and that's not going to change anytime soon. Like a lot of the stuff that people like, the payments rails that power, like people don't know this, but like all these large hedge funds and money managers, and even the Federal Reserve of the United States, which like has PhD economists, like figuring out interest rates and how to price where, like they're looking at all kinds of payments data and payments flows to spot trends and all of that. And like a lot of the internet is powered by the Oracle ecosystem. And I just think it's a little bit silly when people, some of them are more junior, so I won't go hard on them, but like you're kind of, oh, Oracle's legacy, we're doing everything on Snowflake. Like, all right, well, you're doing your thing on Snowflake, but it's not representative of the market. Not
Yeah,
to pick
yeah.
on Snowflake, but like
Yeah, it's definitely, and I'm glad you're bringing that up. And I think at the end of the day, it comes down to cost, which I understand not everyone has budgets for that type of beefy infrastructure, but at the same time you have to think about the value, right? So and data teams are being pushed now because we're kind of in that post ZERP climate, right, where bringing value and ROI of everything is like very critical to saying something is a success. Launching a report internally isn't a success anymore. You have to tie that to some actual business initiative. So if it's not powering a critical business initiative, then CFO will drop the hammer and say, why is our, cloud bill so high right now? No one's actually using this stuff like for reporting. So I think that's what it's going to come back to in terms of the vendors you pick and the ROI you're trying to deliver.
Yeah. We can open up the floor here if anyone has questions or wants to come on. Mary, do you want to post the link in the chat? I think you're muted, Mary.
We're seeing comments, but I'm not seeing all the names, everybody. So, but we're happy to see everybody here. All right, let me post the link.
I see a Hitachi mainframe. Wow, fun.
Yeah, old school. I want to know. I've been thinking about things a lot just from the sales perspective. Just because I've been seeing in the past couple of months a lot of salespeople being let go because it's really hard to sell anything in the modern data stack in the current economic climate. So how is Striim approaching that, or either in relation to the economic climate or just sort of what are some of the pain points when you're going into, we'll say, an enterprise customer?
So definitely getting to teams that are more operational. They haven't been as impacted by the modern data stack ebbs and flows, and because if your team is in charge of running something operational at like a Fortune 500, those budgets aren't being slashed. But like for and Striim was never really part of the quote unquote modern data stack, right? Lauren, you were bringing up market maps and vendor maps and things like that. So we personally never rode that wave of like, hey, we're just going to EL data to your Snowflake, and that's our value proposition. So we haven't seen the impacts of the what I've heard is like a downturn in that side of the data economy. We've always been focused on enterprises and very operational teams, is the long story short.
Yeah, right on.
Nice.
I'll ask you another question too here, another trend, and it's very tangentially related. But like you have your OLTP systems, you have your OLAP systems. How much of this hybrid approach are you seeing, or are you working with customers potentially? Like there's like single store, and like Snowflake put out their thing. I think it's in private preview. There's been attempts to like make this hybrid, like between an OLTP and an OLAP, and some of it's gone off the ground. Some customers use this stuff some places, but I'm curious, like, how do you see that from your lens, like working, as the head of product at Striim?
Yeah, I always defer back to one of the people that I've always followed, even in an academic sense, which is Michael Stonebreaker, and he's a very respected researcher in data management systems. Speaking of your streaming market map, his Streambase was omitted from that as well. So I think Striim was in great company being omitted from that specific market.
Well, everyone was omitted from that.
But so Michael Stonebreaker says no one size fits all, right? You have to make in distributed systems, you have to make trade-offs. We hear about CAP theorem. That's the most popular one, between consistency, availability, partition, tolerance, things along those lines. But that's just one example. That's the most popular one. There's hundreds and to thousands of trade-offs you have to make, right? So when I hear HTAP, I haven't seen a lot of it. I've seen situations where, maybe we have some replica of a database that's used for OLAP purposes, but that's not exactly the same thing as HTAP. I work with a really large enterprise that uses SQL Server replicas for analytics, and they do great with that infrastructure. But even they're thinking about but that's not HTAP, right? Because it's still, running queries on a replica versus like one compute engine for both analytics and transaction processing. So I haven't seen it in the wild. It goes against some of the things that I've learned. I'm very curious to see how it is going to be adopted in the market and at scale. Because I mean, you can make everything work in a vacuum, right? You can make everything work in like a POC. Question is like, is it going to get large adoption at scale? And we'll just have to see.
Yeah. And the same with Spark, right? I mean, I guess you're kind of competitive with Spark in a way, like just as a concept. But a lot of folks, it's been having a good run over the last couple of years. It's adopted in places. How do you play with a Spark customer or like a Spark heavy type of customer? I know you're more transactional and that type of stuff, but how are you fitting in there as Striim?
Yeah, Spark customers, and a lot of times it's now Databricks is probably the most popular compute engine for Spark, but you're seeing the cloud providers integrate it into their database data warehouses as well. There's Microsoft Fabric, there's BigQuery is adding Spark extensions, and I think there's always going to be this concept of a data lake where data is sitting, and Spark's a great tool for cheap compute with a pretty flexible API to process that data. The way we interface with it is streaming the data into the data lake. The way that we generally do it is tied to business use cases that have an SLA, right? So we did this case study with American Airlines, and I think if you read the paper stream processing in a spreadsheet, I love seeing that come to life, where essentially, yes, streaming data from operational systems like MongoDB into data lakes, and there's going to be some Spark jobs that fire email reports of just tables and CSVs, right? But then on top of that, right, they're not just doing that for fun. There's a lot of stream processing that feeds operational workflows at the same time. So those are the types of environments I like to work on the most, like those hybrid operational analytical environments where you're using batch processing selectively on the data lake, but at the same time, that you're streaming into these hardcore business units that are doing something that's moving the needle. Like, so for instance, retailers like Macy's use Striim to feed their digital Macy's.com infrastructure with inventory data. So I think Striim is the core and batch is the extension.
Interesting.
I forgot to warn you both that I have a hard out at 45 because my daughter forgot her lunch and I have to swing it over to her before noon. But we've got another 6 minutes to get a few more questions and comments in. I want to turn a little bit to Lauren for a second. Lauren, with the consulting you're doing, what are you seeing on the batch versus streaming debate?
I mean, like a lot of these small companies, investing in this deeper infrastructure is not something that they do. Like, John mentioned Macy's, right? Like, yeah, they're going to invest in this, because they have to. But like these smaller companies, what happens with them, and I'm mostly talking about like decision support and business intelligence, less pure operational or transactional, but they get to a point where, they're just running this batch and they dump this data into some target, Snowflake or whatever. And then they, transform it and they get to a different layer and they materialize it into a different layer. And then business intelligence hits it. And that's all fine. If maybe you're paying twice as much as you should, but that much. But if it's the difference between 400K and 800K, that could be a difference. And there's latency problems with all this as well. Like the latency, the way a lot of these things are set up today. I'll pick on Snowflake here, but if you're having these batch latency problems, and you've already optimized your SQL as best as you can and everything, what can you do to get better latency there? Well, you can throw more resources at it. You can, pick, your small t-shirt size warehouse and bump it up to medium, or bump that medium up to a large, right? And so it's this kind of game of this like step process, throwing more resources at things. And I mean, I don't know, I don't want to get too controversial here, but like, I don't know, the Snowflake Instacart funny thing, like, like, I mean, they publish blogs about it, and like they're, kind of paying out the nose for batch stuff, and they're reprocessing all their data in a lot of cases as well, constantly, which is a huge mistake in my opinion. I mean, I think that like most like decent like senior level engineers or like data architects can figure out like pretty easily how to sort, partition, stuff like that to make that not a problem. But a lot of businesses are, are slowly stepping up to that. So
Right.
I don't know. It's a big, it's just latency cost trade off, right? You can either have worse latency, but it's like cheaper when you're doing all this batch stuff, or like, you can make it more expensive and throw more resources at it, and then that improves your latency. So I don't know. Like I see these things out there that are like, we dump all of our data into a system, and then we transform it out in SQL and Airflow and DBT or whatever, and then that takes 8 hours to run through. And so your data's already 8 hours out of date by the time it's, in whatever you're using, some kind of machine learning model, in some kind of dashboard or whatever. So
Yeah.
I think that as like, and in my read of the market, like a lot of businesses are, they're exponential, or if I'm on the camera, I think I go the other way, but like it's just exponential. And like by year 2, by year 3 of this, which is where we're at right now, a lot of businesses adopted this in the last 2 or 3 years. They're paying like these exponential fees to all this stuff, and that's going to lead to a lot of people moving away from this and looking at CDC solutions, looking at Striim solutions, and just kind of getting rid of all this cruft that kind of sits in the middle.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think we both kind of talked about this a lot, which is there was this in the ZERP environment, there was this, let's call it a cloud consumption cabal, right? There's all these things that make it super easy to run high, cloud consumption for, especially for startups, right? And I think you really hit the
Cabal.
startup
Good
cloud
word.
consumption cabal, right? And
Look at-
why
right.
was it so
CCC.
easy to run up these cloud bills? It was like they optimized the user experience to be expensive and wasteful in ways that were hard to track, and they almost encouraged you, like it's kind of like a casino where the machines that you play on, like give you all these endorphin rushes and make you gamble more. And I think, and Lauren, you always talk about this, Mary, you speak to this as well, and I think that's sort of going out the window, because I've never been a big fan of that. I've spoken to people where I'm very open and say, look, if your job is tied to cloud consumption metrics, we're not going to work well together, because I just, that's not my area to focus on, especially with like enterprise customers that can't afford to do that type of stuff.
Right.
Absolutely. We had some great questions here from Hugo, which I think Val answered. So if not, Lauren and John will maybe chime in the comments there. So we're going to wrap, and I'm going to bring in actually one of Hugo's comments, which his advice to me was, why don't you just stream your daughter your lunch rather than ending the show early to go drive her lunch. And Hugo, that is the world I am living for, and we are not there yet. So anyway,
doing batch processing, it's awful.
Yes. Anyway, this was great, John. Come back anytime. Next time, wear your denim. I've got a couple minutes if either of you have any last words. John, you tell us where we can find you. You've got your own show, right?
Yeah. What's new in data, which is generally about the industry. You both have to come on it. Open invite anytime. And then my Twitter and my LinkedIn, both just my name, John Kutay. And you can always see me there. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. And we know where to find you, Lauren, on your Medium, on your Twitter. Any final words from you today?
No, I got to go up and see some leaves in Burlington, but it's great to have you on, John, and keep beating the drum because you're right about a lot of things, and people are slowly realizing, like maybe people who are on the other side, right? It's like a political thing, and maybe
It is
oh, this
political.
guy, yeah, it is political and it's tribal, and like if let's say you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, whatever, people who are on the other side, oh, who's this guy John, right? But you're moving a few people over. We're moving a few to the moderate side. They're considering it more. So I appreciate that always.
Appreciate you
Love it.
both for having me on. The best
All
bros
right.
in the
Yeah,
business.
take care.
Love it. Talk soon, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bros.
Bye.